Everybody loves the idea of moving to Colorado. The mountains, powder days, bluebird skies, the list goes on and on. And as a 42-year Colorado and Denver native, I get it. There are a lot of reasons why Colorado is unbeatable. But there are a few things that are really important to understand before making the move out here to the Mile High City. In this video today, I'm gonna be sharing with you guys 5 that I see are the most commonly overlooked, but can make a huge impact if not done correctly. So excited to share all of this with you guys on a brand new episode of Living in Denver. Let's go. All right, you guys, so as I said, today's gonna be all about these 5 things that are very important to keep in mind before making the big move out here to Colorado. Before we get started, if any questions come up during this video, all that info down below, I would love to connect with you guys. My name's Adam Lang, I'm a licensed realtor, but more importantly, I'm a Colorado and Denver native, and I just love connecting with viewers like yourself, so don't be a stranger. All right, so again, this first point that I wanna share with you is how important it is to rent gear before buying. And when I'm referring to gear, what I mean is all of the stuff that goes along with the fun hobbies and activities that you pick up after moving out here to Colorado. And let me tell you, there are no shortage of fun things to get involved in, especially with the outdoors being so accessible, in a lot of cases, even just right out your back door. But when it comes to a lot of these activities, there's a pretty steep price tag just to get involved, just to get the stuff that you need to start having fun. Now, when I think about the biggest, most popular ones, things like skiing, mountain biking, maybe even paddleboarding, there's all these activities that require at least $1,000, but sometimes several $1,000s just to get everything you need. And what happens is sometimes after just 1 or 2 seasons, the person that bought all that stuff realizes that, yeah, it was fun, but I'm just not committed and that's not the right hobby for me. So you can avoid all of this issue with spending way too much money just by renting instead of buying. So for skiing, for example, instead of going out and buying a $500 pair of ski boots and maybe a $150 pair of goggles and helmet and brand new skis, poles, the list goes on and on. Before you know it, you're up to $3,000 or $4,000. Instead of that, just going down to one of the local shops. One of my favorites is actually in Wheat Ridge. It's called Larson's Ski and Sport. And you can literally rent the boots, skis, and poles for maybe $150, $200 for the season. This is such a better solution just to test the waters a bit and just make sure that this really is something that you want to do and invest that money maybe for that 2nd or 3rd season. After just getting a little bit more confidence and assurance that this is the sport for you. One quick example of this, when I used to live up in the mountains, I lived up in the Carbondale Basalt area for over a decade. This is up kind of near Aspen in that part of Colorado. And when I was up there, I just decided one kind of year out of the blue that I'd like to get into road biking, cycling. And I bought this couple $1,000 bike, the spandex shorts that are ridiculous and nobody wants to wear, as well as all the other little things that have to go with this, the helmet, the gloves, different water bottles, just all that stuff. Several $1,000s of investment, and I literally probably went 5 times and just realized that this is not for me. Hurt my butt really bad, just was not enjoyable, and realized this was just great for a lot of people, but not for me. And that was a very serious investment that I made that I shouldn't have. So I've done this myself even after being here my whole life and just realizing that, the best way to do this for a lot of people is renting before buying. I guarantee you'll thank me later if you do pick up a hobby that just really wasn't meant to be. So with that being said, let's just jump right into the second tip, the local tip that's really important to understand. And there definitely are some other videos that talk about this on YouTube, but everybody hears this, the claim to fame of Colorado has over 300 days of sunshine a year. And yes, that is true. We do have some incredible weather, not just with the heat and the sunshine, but also with the great, winter weather with skiing, all that kind of stuff. But what I want to talk about is not the weather as much as it is the dryness. So, man, I don't know if you guys have ever been out here to Colorado. Hopefully you have, but even if you have and you just maybe didn't realize this, depending on what time of year you came out, during especially the winter months, it is so dry out here. If you're not used to carrying around chapstick or just making sure you put on lotion every day, this is something that a lot of people just don't realize until they get out here, and they're just like, man, why am I so dry? My throat's sore. I just don't have as much energy. There's just so many kind of side effects of this dry air that people don't realize until they get out here. So if you guys are already dealing with just having dry skin and just really being affected by dry weather where you're currently living, just be aware that you're probably going to even notice it more out here. And yeah, there are a lot of ways to, at least minimize the effects of this. And just the quick tip that I'll share, the biggest one of them all is just staying hydrated. So yes, no matter where you live in the world, it's important to drink a lot of water, but especially in places like Colorado, where not only is it a very dry climate, but also you're a little bit higher up in elevation. Two things that are really, really important to be aware of, but also to minimize the effects by just drinking plenty of water. I always try and drink a gallon a day. I don't necessarily hit that every day, but that's just a good rule of thumb, especially if you want to make just extra positive sure that you're not dealing with the extremity of the dryness that a lot of people just really have it to the point where they're, uncomfortable. And I don't know if it's enough of a deterrent to not live here, but definitely enough of a deterrent to be aware of and try and do whatever you can to minimize its effects. So just a little small tip to share with you guys, but also still very, very important. All right, so now I want to just jump right into this third point. And this one, again, might be something that you're already aware of, but maybe not. And it sounds a little bit straightforward and pretty simple, but you see it all the time out here. And that is understanding how important it is to have a car that is four-wheel drive. Now, you don't necessarily have to have four-wheel drive. You could also have an all-wheel drive vehicle, but it is pretty crazy how many people's only mode of transportation out here is a car that's really more of a sports car. Maybe a lot of people, maybe viewers like yourselves that are just from out of state, coming from a more warm, maybe a more mellow climate, maybe you only have a two-wheel drive vehicle. Well, when you get out here, yes, you will be able to make that work for the most part, especially if you're spending the majority of your time in the Denver metro area. But let's be honest, if you guys are coming out here, you want to have the ability to be able to get up to the mountains and do it safely. And I'll tell you guys, this is super important, especially if you're trying to go up to the mountains to go skiing. And something that I bet you haven't heard before on other videos on YouTube, but there's actually restrictions by CDOT, the Colorado Department of Transportation, and the police department, where they'll go out at different times of the year. Most often it's actually in the spring months, like late March, early April, where typically you would think that the roads would be dry and clear and no more snow in the mountains. But what happens is we get these late season storms and all of these cars get stuck, especially on Eisenhower Tunnel in that area around Silverthorne, going up into the Breckenridge and even further up to Vail Pass, where Vail and Beaver Creek ski areas are located. But in some of those mountain passes in the springtime especially, what will happen is people will assume that it's nice and sunny and dry and clear up there like it might be in Denver, and they'll get into predicaments where their cars will get stuck. And what will happen is CDOT or the police department, if you get stuck and you have to call for help, sometimes you'll actually get a fine and a ticket because your tires don't have enough tread on them. And that is basically just as important as having that four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive capability. So it's really, really important to not only have, again, the correct tires, making sure you have enough tread to be safe and appropriate for the mountains, but also just really being cautious about having an all-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive option in your vehicle. If you guys are coming out here to Colorado, yes, you think of these mountains that are massive, 14,000 foot peaks. We have over 50 of them here in Colorado. And yeah, you're not gonna be driving to the top of the peaks, but you at least wanna have a vehicle that's capable of getting you to the trailhead where you start the hike, or just having that ability to go up on the weekend in the middle of winter and enjoy an awesome powder day on the mountain. These things are really only achievable if you can do it safely, and the best way to do that is to have a vehicle that you're confident in. So just be really, really careful about what kind of vehicle you're bringing out here, and if it might be a little bit too sporty, or maybe it's a rear-wheel drive or just a front-wheel drive vehicle, it might be worth considering upgrading that to something a little bit more appropriate, maybe even before you guys come out here. Okay, so with that, let's just jump right now into the fourth point that I want to make. This is another thing that a lot of people that move out here don't realize. And I'd say it's something that most people, they get a good grasp of before they decide to buy a home out here. But the point I want to make here is that you don't necessarily live in the mountains when you're in Denver, but you do have the opportunity to feel like you do. So what I mean by this is when you think of Denver and you think of it being at a mile high, the Mile High City, so just Denver's at 5,280 feet of elevation, wow, that kind of seems like, yeah, maybe you're in the mountains, but you're really not. You're still in a pretty flat area of land, but you have all the mountains to the west, and there's certain areas, if you're intentional, areas like Evergreen, Boulder, Golden, even parts of southwestern Littleton, and even parts of Wheat Ridge and Applewood, areas where you're on that western side of Denver where you have very easy access to I-70 to get up to the mountains, but in a lot of cases you can actually be almost living in the foothills where, yes, you're not going to have a ski area out your back door, but you'd have some amazing mountain biking trails, hiking, just stuff that you can do without getting back in your car once you get home for the day. And I've made a lot of other videos on this because I'm so passionate about it. Man, when you live in an area in Denver Denver where you don't have to get back in your car and commute just to drive to a park or a trailhead, whatever you're gonna try and enjoy and do in the afternoon. When you have that accessibility from where you live, you're so much more likely to do it on a more regular basis, and you're just gonna have a lot more fun because you're not dealing with the stress of just fighting all the other people in Denver to do kind of those similar afternoon activities. Really, really important just to be intentional before you decide to buy a place or just to rent a place here in Colorado, and especially in Denver, just being aware of what's your priority. What do you really enjoy the most? Are you a really outdoorsy type person? And if so, you really wanna make sure you're intentional about being on the right side of town. You know, just as a quick example before we move on, if you were to move out here and decide to live in an area like southeastern Aurora, which is a very, very popular place, some amazing homes. Actually, one of my favorite neighborhoods in all of Denver is in this area called South Shore. Awesome place to live, but if you are really prioritizing these afternoon, jaunts up to the foothills to enjoy a mountain bike ride after work, maybe just a nice hour-long hike to get up into the foothills and watch sunset, man, you're gonna do it a few times if you live over in that Southeast Aurora area. You're gonna make that 45-minute drive to the trailhead a couple times, and then you're just gonna get sick of it, and it's probably gonna become something that you do once or twice a year instead of once or twice a week. So just be really, really cautious and be making sure that you're thinking about this ahead of time. Good point. I guarantee you guys will thank me later. Okay, and then last but not least, the fifth local tip I gotta share with you guys, and this one is something that you might already think you're aware of, but this one is all about I-70, which again is the interstate that we take to get up to the mountains. It goes east to west, and really from most places in Denver, especially if you're on that western side of town, with only an hour drive, you're already at the first of our major ski areas. The first one is actually Loveland, which is one of my favorites, especially in the springtime because it's such a quick and easy drive. Now, the point that I'm trying to make on this fifth and final point is how important it is to be really intentional and strategic about trying to do whatever you possibly can to not go skiing on the weekends. We have this term out here called weekend warrior, and man, I bet that's probably a term across the nation, but in Colorado, weekend warrior is a big deal, and you really want to avoid having to be stuck in that group of people that are just sitting on I-70 for sometimes hours just to get, a few hours on the ski hill. When you spend more time in your car going up to and back down from the ski area rather than the amount of time on the chairlift and actually skiing, something's a little bit off there. And again, you do this a couple times and you just lose the motivation and the interest and the desire to do it on a regular basis. And all of a sudden, instead of these grandiose idea of, maybe skiing 30 or 40 times a season, maybe you're making it up there 5 or 10 days. So you can avoid this just by trying to figure out a way with your work schedule to ski on weekdays. And I know this sounds a lot, probably easier than it actually is, but even if you just have a few days of vacation and instead of going somewhere out of state or out of the country, maybe saving a few of those days just to create a 3-day weekend on a non-big public holiday weekend. So I'm not talking about, for example, President's Day weekend, which is one of the busiest in the entire season for skiers, but finding other weekends that are maybe a little bit less busy to begin with, and then just tacking on that third day. So instead of going up and down in the same day, maybe get a few friends together and rent a place in one of the ski mountains for a 3-day weekend. You're gonna have 3 awesome days of skiing this way, as well as just no stress with dealing with the commute up and down in the same day. So that's kind of the perfect, most prime way to do this. But if that's just unachievable, or maybe you're able to do that once a season, the other option is just figuring out a way that you can go up on weekdays. And a great option that I think is amazing, I do this myself all the time, is when you identify these mountains that are really close. Loveland is a really good example. Another one would be Arapahoe Basin. The mountains that are kind of the first ones that you hit when you take I-70 to the west. What you can do is if you get a weekday pass, or if you just buy a single day pass in the springtime on the weekdays, sometimes they'll have really, really good cheap deals. As an example, Arapahoe Basin this entire winter, every Wednesday, they sold day tickets for only $50. Every other day of the week, they were $150, if not more, but on Wednesdays, only $50. Kind of local tips here. If you're able to identify some of these mountains that are doing these specials, just even do it in a half day. So what I would do often, and I do this probably 3 or 4 times a season, kind of in the March time of year, is I'll get up early, I'll hit the road at 8 a.m., I'll be at Arapahoe Basin at 9, I'll ski for about 2.5, maybe 3 hours, get back in my car, and I'll be home literally by 12:30, maybe 1 o'clock at the latest. Still able to do almost a full day of work. A lot of people don't even know I left for the day. So really, really good way to still get on the mountain and avoid all of that headache with the weekend warrior traffic and congestion that you're gonna deal with, not only going up, but especially even worse after you're tired skiing all day, having to sit in traffic and spend another 2 or 3 hours in your car just to get back home. Nobody's got time for that. I know you guys don't. I know I don't. So just do whatever you can. Ski on the weekdays and look for those really, really good cheap deals for some of the mountains for those weekday passes. All right, guys, with all that being said, let's just close this one out. Again, 5 local tips that I think are really, really important to keep in mind and just be aware of. I know some of these may have seemed a little bit basic and simple and no-brainers, but these are the things that I hear about on a regular basis from not only clients that I've helped out personally, but also just friends and family members that have also decided to come out and move out here to Mile High City, Denver, Colorado. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. I'll catch you guys next time.